Since the release of its first episode back in December of 2019, it didn't take long for The Witcher to become one of the most beloved fantasy shows in the history of Netflix. And with an incredible amount of celebrated lore to pull from, this overwhelming success made complete sense. But what more do we need to know about the future of the franchise, and is it any good? For all this and more, stay tuned. First of all, what is The Witcher Blood Origin? When can we expect it? For those of you who don't know, Netflix has decided to walk in the footsteps of other streaming giants by capitalizing on their #1 franchise starring Henry Cavill. Although the franchise has released just 2 seasons at the moment, with the second being less enthusiastically received than the first, it sounds like Netflix wants to milk the cow that is The Witcher before things dry up. And what better way to do this than invest in a spin-off prequel? Well, according to the majority of fans, this isn't the best decisions from the crew at Netflix. Not only is the Witcher franchise barely established at this point, the money directed at the spin-off is desperately needed by the original series, which saw somewhat of a drop in creative writing when it came to the release of its latest installment. But by the sound of things, the streaming giant is going ahead with its plan to explore the past of the Witcher universe. The good news is that showrunners Lauren Hissrich and Declan de Barra, who were actually responsible for the writing of one of the most successful Witcher episodes of Banquets, Bastards, and Burials, are the ones developing this 6-part live-action prequel. In other words, fans can expect a pretty detailed look into the Temeria we've come to love. But what can we expect from the prequel, and how will it fit into the Witcher universe? According to reports, The Witcher Blood Origin will be dealing with the complicated nature of Witchers and how they first came about. The franchise has already explored just what Geralt had to go through in an effort to become the monster hunter that he is, and even had Ciri looking to do the same in the second season. There's a lot that's been left unsaid, especially in respect of the origins of this process, and it sounds like this is what the showrunners will be focusing on come release. The world back then was also pretty different, and saw the elves of old as the main holders of magic in Temeria. Fortunately for them though, their civilization was almost wiped from the face of the lands when humans arrived around 1200 years before the adventures of Geralt. It's a dark period of time that the novels of Andrzej Sapkowski never really explored in detail, so it'll be great to see what the writers have in store for us in the coming days. Suffice to say, Geralt of Rivia will not be present in this prequel series. But what can we expect is a detailed explanation of how the world of The Witcher actually works. Remember, Temeria and the rest of the lands of the show are part of a multiverse that looks similar to the 9 worlds of Norse mythology, so there's more than enough content to draw from that won't affect the original. We should also come to expect the exploration of deeper themes like racism. There's something that fantasy shows and comic books alike have become pretty well known for over the years, and while The Witcher has already investigated themes similar to this in the past, the prequel is going to no doubt dabble in how this all came about. Fans of the X-Men franchise and broader universe are very aware how mutants were treated as second-class citizens in the Marvel universe. And in the same sense, The Witcher presents viewers with non-human characters that are treated in the same way. And as it turns out, the unnamed world of The Witcher was first inhabited by these creatures before humans even called the realm their own, making their second-class nature something of a difficult position to understand. In other words, a prequel is definitely needed to explain how this all came about, and why exactly mankind thought it best to wipe these creatures from the world without even a second thought. Remember, at the very center of The Witcher is Geralt's realization that the biggest monsters are human, which is why he decides to carry 2 swords, one of steel for the men and one of silver for the more supernatural foe. Themes of racism and unacceptable differences will thus most certainly be delivered on the silver platter when it comes to the release of The Witcher Blood Origin. And as long as this is done without being too on the nose, we have a feeling that the prequel could be rather exceptional. This isn't all though, with Blood Origin no doubt referencing the elder blood of old. We heard a lot of this in the second season of the franchise, which had the viewer discovering that Ciri possesses blood that's pretty rare in the extended Witcher universe. We are of course referring to the elder blood, which is flowing through her veins, and since this is what allows her to exercise those impressive abilities of her, the origin of this blood will need to be explored. According to the lore of the franchise, elves used to breed with the express purpose of refining this elder blood, as it allowed the recipients to demonstrate incredible abilities and prowess with magic. But when the last carrier of the elder blood, Laura Duran, fell in love with a human mage by the name of Cregeninen of Laud, the world has changed forever. You see, Laura died shortly after the birth of their half-elf elf child, which essentially led to the death of the original line of elder blood. And as it turns out, neither race appreciated this relationship and birth. According to customs, purity was everything, which is something we still see repeated in the world that Geralt walks in the original series. It's been confirmed that the Witcher blood origin will end up following a single timeline though, which is great news considering how confusing many found the first season of the franchise. And since the lineage of the elder blood can be difficult to grasp, we're more than happy to hear that things will be made simpler. Speaking of the original series, Hissrich has some news about Season 3. For those of you who don't know, Season 3 of the show is actually greenlit before Season 2 actually made its way to the streaming platform. That's just how much faith Netflix has in this series that has introduced us to names like Yennefer of Vengerberg, Geralt of Rivia. But according to Hissrich, who just so happens to be one of the most prominent names of the show, things are going to get crazy come Season 3. And with the filming of the season set to begin shortly, we couldn't be more excited. In her own words, Season 3 is going to be huge, which is pretty vague, but seems to suggest that we have a lot to look forward to when it comes to the future of the show. We doubt Hissrich would have made this statement if the budget had been cut drastically, after all. But this shouldn't actually come as a surprise to viewers who saw the Wild Hunt show up in the finale of Season 2 after being teased throughout the duration of the show. Without giving away too much, the Wild Hunt is the big bad Geralt and Ciri end up facing off against in The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt, which is still celebrated as one of the best RPG games on the market right now. So it goes without saying that the appearance of this antagonistic force will have a lot to do with the huge nature of the third season. Season 3 is also said to be both romantic and heartbreaking. This goes without saying since Geralt of Rivia is now reunited with Yennefer, who decided against sacrificing Ciri and took on somewhat of a motherly role towards the end of Season 2. But for fans of the Witcher franchise, this is bittersweet. You see, Geralt and Yennefer have a somewhat tempestuous relationship. As much as they love each other, they can't help but use one another to further their own selfish needs. Yennefer is especially guilty of this, which we saw play out in Season 2 when she kidnapped Ciri in an attempt to regain her lost powers. That being said, both Cavil and Shalatra play these roles incredibly well. We can't help but hope that they put their differences aside at one point, just work on making one another happy. We know that Ciri would appreciate not being put in the middle, so there's at least one supporter of the relationship. What happens when Triss comes along to shake things up more? We'll just have to wait and see. And there you have it, everything you need to know about the future of the Witcher franchise. What do you think of the decision to go ahead with The Witcher Blood Origin though? And which storylines do you want explored in the future? Feel free to let us know in the comments section down below.